Well, welcome back. We're continuing our discussion on how we can build skills to transform practice, with a specific focus this week on crafting a tight introduction and methods section of our manuscript so that we can transform practice not only at our local site where we're working, but also more broadly in the world of patient and population care, because we disseminate our work into the scholarly community. So as we build those skills for transforming practice, I want you to take a moment, listen to these two clips, and I want you to tell me what you hear. So first, on clip A, open your ears wide, take notes on a paper and pencil or on your device, and come back. Tell us what you hear. So here it goes. All right, how would you describe clip A? Now let's pivot and let's take a listen to clip B. How would you describe this one? All right, so how would you describe clip B? So this may be your description of clip A. It's chaotic, hard to understand, annoying, painful. You might give it the word cacophony. The notes and the scenes are not blending together to create a harmonious picture. How about clip B? So this might be how you describe clip B. Something that's more harmonious, integrated. The notes are playing off of each other. It creates an integrated, harmonious feel. So as you think about your own DMP project, which option would you prefer for your project? Would you prefer the cacophony or the harmony? And I'm going to propose that a theoretical framework is what provides the harmony for a strong and robust project and a robust manuscript. And I'll make the case in our talk today, and you can see if you buy it or not. But essentially, when you have a project that doesn't have an integrated theory to bind the parts together, you have the potential to have a cacophonous manuscript and a cacophonous project, because you don't have a theoretical lens, a way to orient everything together, a way to leverage your literature to set up the methods that you use to answer a question. You don't have a way to frame your results. You don't have a structure to organize your discussion around. And the theory provides some of that integration and the potential to harmonize the items of your manuscript so that you can be a more effective and articulate transformer of practice through your manuscript. So as you think about this option of having cacophony or harmony, which do you choose? So let me show you how theory can provide a harmonious approach to your manuscript. So as you know, in our DMP projects, we're essentially bridging the gap between what we know from science and evidence and what's actually done in practice. And that's what your DMP project is designed to do. And a theoretical framework is like a roadmap. It's a guide that gives you vision for how you can close that gap, how you can collect data, what data you should collect in order to close that gap. So when you think about your practice issue, put it in your mind. I'm going to give you one case example of HIV transmission. So if you're not in the HIV world, you might think HIV transmission is a really narrow element of biomedical science. But as you think about how you would like to tackle HIV transmission and reducing HIV transmission, I'm going to show you how the theoretical framework that you choose gets you a radically different path for how you address HIV transmission. So you may be familiar with the stages of change model, the trans-theoretical model. It essentially suggests that there are 5 stages that people go through in making change. There's pre-contemplation, where they're not thinking about an idea; contemplation, where they think about it; determination, they say, yes, I'm headed in this direction; action where they actually put into place what they've planned to do, and then where you can have relapse or maintenance. So you can either continue the behavior that you intend or relapse and go back to your previous state. So if you think about injection drug use as a mechanism of HIV transmission, someone might contemplate behavior change to reduce their risk for HIV transmission. And if you have a DNP project that's using this trans-theoretical model, you're going to think about these different stages of change, and you're probably going to want to measure them or deliver an intervention along one or more of these stages of change to reduce HIV transmission among injection drug users. So that's what a project might look like with a trans-theoretical model. What about if you're not thinking about the change process in that cycle, but you say, I think what people believe and their attitudes are absolutely critical for their intention to act and then their behavior. So I think that what the things are normal for a person or their attitudes about a behavior are going to drive what they intend to do and what they actually do. They're going to make choices based on their attitudes and knowledge. So if you took that approach to HIV transmission, this would be the theory of reasoned action. It's more of a cognitive theory, a theory about what goes on in people's heads. And if you're dealing with injection drug use, there might be some significant shortcomings to using this approach, because there might be components of injection drug use that are metacognitive or not subject to intellectual reasoning alone, such as social norms or behavioral patterns or a physiologic need. But if you were to do a HIV transmission project with a theories of reasoned action, you'd want to look at beliefs, attitudes, intentions, and behaviors. Now, what if you wanted to improve their risk reduction behavior for injection drug use, and you want to increase their perceived benefits of a certain behavior and increase their perceived risk of HIV acquisition and give them certain things, certain cues to act in specific ways? If you were using that approach, that would be the health belief model. Again, it's looking at why people do what they do. You're trying to understand the benefits and barriers, increase their perceived susceptibility, the perceived severity, so that they act in a way that promotes their health, and then you bring in cues to help them act in certain ways. So if you were using the health belief model to design your project, you would probably create intervention strategies that increased cues to action and increased the perceived severity and susceptibility to HIV. Those are all behavioral theories. If you want to talk about theories of context, there are approaches that look at the community identity and the strengths of the community, looking for ways to bring mutual benefit, learning, iteration, and solutions that are ecological, that don't just look at the individual, but look at their environment, look at their relationships. So an approach like this that has the community as the center of identity is common in community-based participatory research approaches. So when you think about a DNP project that uses CBPR, you're not going to be looking at that individual and trying to change individual behavior. You're probably going to be looking more at the community, the shared experience, and creating strategies together with that community. It's a very different approach than the theory of reasoned action. It's focusing mostly on what's happening in people's heads. If you were still to think about context and say, what's the catalyst driving change in a situation? Are there certain principles that could guide a change process that I could design to have impact and scale? That would be something like the model, the seed scale model for sustained transformation. where you have principles that guide your work, a systematic process that's iterative, and then a process of expanding and disseminating what you discover in that context to others. That's a theory about context and behavior change. So a seed scale lens for HIV transmission would again look more at that community of injection drug users and strategies to build on their previous successes and focus on behavior change with a systematic process. Different approach compared to CBPR, and also very different compared to a cognitive approach to the individual injection drug user. You might also think about HIV transmission reduction from a system approach for the process. How do we improve the process of care that we give to these patients in clinics or mobile health services? And you might use something like the model for improvement that's looking at specific goals and making small-scale tests of change with PDSA cycles. And you might build on preliminary ideas with multiple PDSA cycles to get larger improvement. You might build those in with learning sessions, periods of action and reflection, and then bringing that together across multiple sites and locations. That's an approach to quality improvement. So it might be optimizing the service to injection drug users or optimizing clinical care in order to reduce HIV transmission. And if you have those different lenses for how you're approaching HIV transmission, it gives you a radically different path. And that path that you choose from your theoretical lens should inform not only what you talk about in your introduction section. Here's the health belief model and how we're going to use it to address HIV transmission, but it will inform the actual data that you collect. You're going to measure things about perceived threat, their barriers and benefits to a certain behavior, and their cues to action. If you're using a seed scale approach, you're going to be talking about different things. What are the successes of this injection drug using community? How are they partnered with technical experts and community members in order to drive a change process that they have ownership of? So you can see theoretical frameworks do provide an overarching structure for your DMP project as a whole and for your manuscript. It's a roadmap to help guide you in the data that you collect, the type of interventions that you do. So when you think about your DMP project, think about that clip that we listened to, the cacophonous sounds that were hard and grating. That's not the manuscript you want to write. That's not the DMP project you want to do. So I'd encourage you to think about, design, strategically select a theoretical framework that's going to bring harmony to your manuscript, harmony to your work, and a more succinct way to summarize the methodology you use, the results that you get, and guide your discussion section so that you're talking about how your work hangs on this theory and confirms, disconfirms, or questions it, builds on what's known from previous work. So this is a critical part of your introduction section. What's the theoretical model that's guiding your work? It's not just picking from a list, putting it in the introduction and forgetting about it. Rather, it's the structure and the architecture that guides the entirety of your project's design, from data collection, data analysis, and talking about the so what of your work for scholarship. That's your introduction section. That's one way to bring a more harmonious, symphonic approach to your manuscript as you disseminate for peers. So use and refine your theories, see how they guide your data collection, your results structure, and the way that you write your discussion section. Have fun with this.